House will come back to order. House will come back to order. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing March 2018 is Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood Awareness Month at the State Capitol, commending the Armucci High School Varsity Competition Cheerleading Team for winning the GHSA Class 2A State Cheerleading Championship, honoring the life and memory of Salita Shaw London Stacy, recognizing and commending the City of East Point for its diversity and committed to inclusion, honoring the life and memory of Marjorie L. Riley, commending and congratulating Alice Bankston Smith, recognizing and commending Lieutenant General Dwayne Patrick, recognizing March 19, 2018 as Marriage Massage Therapy Association Georgia Chapter Day at the State Capitol, recognizing and commending Reverend James Clifford Grant on the occasion of his 7th pastoral anniversary, commending the Lovejoy Lady Wildcat basketball team for winning the 2018 GHSA Class 6A State Basketball Championship, recognizing and commending Joanne Maga Celeste Landrigan Gardner, recognizing and commending Coach Charles I. Chuck Reed on the occasion of his retirement, commending Brenda Wood for outstanding career and success, recognizing March 19, 2018 as Spelman College Day at the State Capitol, honoring the life and memory of Arthur James McAfee Jr., commending and congratulating Ann Ruth A. Ralston Jones, and recognizing and commending Viva on his continued engagement and activity within the community and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Is Representative Newton, is he on the floor or in the anteroom? Before we go back to the rules calendar, I thought this might be a good time to wish some happy birthdays. And Sunday will be the birthday of Chairman Ed Setzler. Chairman Setzler, happy birthday. And I drug you back in here, Representative, because I understand that Saturday, St. Patrick's Day, will be your birthday. Happy birthday to Representative Mark Newton. Now, we have one today. and I am getting conflicting text messages from the coast as to his correct age. I have threatened to put his driver's license on the projector screen. Please join me in wishing a happy birthday to Representative Don Hogan. He was afraid I was going to tell. We're going back now to the rules calendar. Going back to the rules calendar. The clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 118.
Senate Bill 118 by Senator Otterman, the 45th, Albers of the 56th, Beach, the 21st, Miller of the 40th, Kirk of the 13th, and others. To be entitled an act to amend Code Section 332459.1. The official code of Georgia annotated relating to the coverage for autism so as to change the age limit for coverage for autism spectrum disorders for an individual covered under a policy or contract. This bill having referred to the Committee on Insurance. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee sub.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the Insurance Committee, Chairman Richard Smith, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really don't know where to start on this particular piece of legislation. It's been a long time coming. I said no for 7 years for an increase in an insurance mandate. And over those 7 years, it's created some really awkward positions. You know, there have been instances that I've been compared to an individual who has horns and a long pointed tail. Yeah, not Al Williams. But if you remember, there's money in the budget for autism and the Marcus Institute and also the facility down in Savannah. And the reason I always said no to this particular project was because I didn't have empirical data to let me know what the cost was. You know, we're always told what the cost was going to be, but we did not have the information. And if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have been saying no at that time, and I did. But we got information from the State Health Benefit Plan that, you know, they've been doing this for 3 years, and their cost is about a little over 40 cents per person insured as far as increase in premium cost. Now, if you figure that out over a year, it's less than the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee and maybe even McDonald's coffee. But it's you know, it's cheap. You know, 40-something cents, 41 to 42 cents, and for me, for easy math, at 40 cents, it'd be $4.80 for a year for the cost of treatment for autism. Now, if you look at the bill itself, the initial plan was to go to 12, but in what we did, we decided to mirror the State Health Benefit Plan on autism coverage. That's 20 years and $35,000, and that's what we did, and that's the recommendation. It will average benefits for the State Health Benefit Plan, just so you'll know, is somewhere per year about $8,000 to $10,000. So it's not that bad, but it really is a tremendous policy for us to help these kids. I was even asked in Senate rules today that they had heard that I didn't have a heart, but now that I'm presenting this, they say I may. Mr. Speaker, that's going to conclude my presentation. There is an amendment to change the effective date to January the 1st to have everybody have time to get all of their computer work put together. So I do support that, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'll yield to one or two.
Chair recognizes Representative Cox. to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my friend in the well, isn't it true that a constituent of mine named Marjorie Vallier will be positively impacted, she and her family, by this bill, and I thank you for bringing it.
There'll be an awful lot of people positively impacted by this by raising the age to 20 and the benefit to 35.
Thank you, sir.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Where are you?
Right back
Oh,
here.
okay. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question.
Please stand up so I can get.
I guess I don't speak enough down here, so
Okay.
I'll try to change that a little bit. But this is actually a serious question. There's a couple of changes from the Senate version I'm just trying to understand. Could you walk me through lines 27 through 30, why we're taking that part out there and we wouldn't treat it like we would any other prescription drug?
Well, if the this is for applied behavioral analysis (ABA), and if in case prescription drugs are required, they will be covered. But this is specifically for ABA treatment. Mr.
Thank
Speaker,
you.
I know how everybody's
sit down.
going to vote, and I'm going to yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Turner to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of SB 118, and I want to start by telling you what it's like to find out that your child is on the autism spectrum. You go through a whole series of emotions, and some of it mirrors the stages of grief, frankly. You recognize that your child might be a little different than the other kids. His behavior might be a little different than other children. He's extraordinarily gifted in some areas. My child, for example, could read Catcher in the Rye at the age of 3 out loud. That's not normal for a 3-year-old boy. He could count. As a matter of fact, one morning we woke up to find that he had gotten a Sharpie marker out and in my office at home had written the alphabet hundreds of times at the age of 3 at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And for whatever reason, I have not had the heart to paint over that. Today, if you go into my office at home, you see 3-year-old writing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K all the way through over and over again on the wall of my office. I knew he was different. I didn't know why. So we go to a preschool program, and a prestigious preschool program, and they recognize right away the symptoms, and they have us go to a psychologist who diagnoses him as on the autism spectrum. At the time, I worked for a small company that was based out of Texas. Texas has Ava's Law already in place. And unlike any other parent, just any other parent with an autistic child, we were able to get him the treatments, the therapies, speech therapy, occupational therapy, that other children in Georgia simply do not have access to because it's not covered under insurance at the time. My son's life, his trajectory as a result of receiving those treatments changed because he had access to insurance that covered those types of therapies. My child today is on a trajectory to be a productive adult. As a matter of fact, some of you have met him. He paged here just a couple weeks ago. He's still autistic. He's still not like a neurotypical child. But he is going to be a productive adult one day. And that's what we're trying to do with SB 118. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't first thank the governor. Governor Deal, if you hear my voice, thank you for leading on this issue and putting it in the state budget for the state health benefit plan so that we could get that data. And I want to lift up Chairman Smith. We have had dozens of conversations about this issues over the years, and he's always been steadfast. I need data. I need data. I need data. And he got data, and the data pointed him in a direction that challenged his preconceived notions. How refreshing is that? That is leadership, sir. Thank you for that. And if this vote passes, absolutely. If it were allowable in the decorum of this House, I would pick you up on my shoulders and carry you out of here after this vote, sir. I just want you to know that. I absolutely would. Thank you. Thank you for your humility and your humbleness. Thank you for your logic and reason. Thank you for your leadership. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is an amendment that has been offered. It is AM 370401. The clerk will read the amendment.
AM 370401 by Smith, the 134th. Amend the House Committee on Insurance Substitute to SB 118, LC 372656S, by inserting after limit on line 4 to provide an effective date. By inserting after line 31 the following: this act shall become effective January 1st, 2019. This amendment has been printed, distributed, and is in your books.
Is there any objection to adopting the amendment? The chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute as amended? The chair hears none. The committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 118 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Chairman Smith rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I'm glad we had this discussion after lunch, because this morning if I'd have gotten up, I probably would have been crying. This is a very emotional. Thanks, sir.
If the gentleman so states. What purpose does Representative Hawkins rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't that Ava in the upper gallery there watching us today? You want to wave, Ava? That's Ava, Ava's Law.
Members favoring the measure are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 118, the ayes are 157, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 395.
Senate Bill 395 by Senator Watson, the 1st, Harbison, the 15th, Walker, the 20th, Black, the 8th, Jones, the 22nd, and others. To be entitled an act to amend Article 10 of Chapter 7 to Title 50, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to the Defense Community Economic Development Fund, so as to create the Georgia Joint Defense Commission. This bill having referred to the Economic Development and Tourism That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Belton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I've come to you this well before speaking about our military, and you have valiantly responded by passing a dozen bills last year, and I think almost a dozen this year, to help our military. I cannot tell you how grateful I am, how you as a body have stepped up to the plate on behalf of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Today I bring before Senate Bill 395 that creates a new Georgia Defense Initiative to protect the third of a million jobs that the military provides to Georgia. It is properly classified as a Georgia Defense Initiative bill, but it really should be called the First Lieutenant Earl Earhart Act, because heroes like First Lieutenant Earl Earhart is who this bill is designed for. First Lieutenant Earl Earhart is a Marine Corps officer. He's a Naval Academy graduate and flies the most difficult plane there is to fly, the AV-8 Bravo Harrier. A jet so versatile, it can hover and land on ships just like a helicopter. Mr. Speaker, I've seen these Harriers land with waves tossing a deck up and down 20 feet or more. If that's not bravery, I don't know what is. First Lieutenant Earl Earhart is proudly serving in the most noble of services on the greatest nation on the face of the planet, slipping the surly bonds of space in defense of a grateful nation. It's for heroes like him that I bring this bill. Senate Bill 395 is something I've been working on for 2 years, and I'm very appreciative of Senator Watson for making this joint effort between the House and the Senate. And I also want to thank Representative Shaw Blackman for doing a lot of work on this, and also Representative Al Williams, whose military licensure bill started this whole discussion on Georgia's military. I'm especially appreciative of Chairman Earl Earhart and his son, an officer and a gentleman, the United States Marine Corps. Without Chairman Earhart's expertise and passion, this Georgia Defense Initiative would not have happened. The defense of this nation is the most important thing we do. Now, most states have some sort of formal commission that not only protects this military installation, but also the workforce that serves that military installation. After all, workforce development in terms of licensure in education especially is what the Pentagon is requesting of us state legislators. The Defense Initiative would create a 19-member panel, 4 members from the House, 4 from the Senate, a member from the Georgia National Guard, a member of our each military installation to align the efforts of 8 military installations to create one Georgia strategy and one voice to create a pathway to jobs. The floor substitute I bring you today is on your desk. Lima Charlie 430970 Echo Romeo Sierra places the Georgia Defense Initiative under the Workforce Development under Technical College System of Georgia, because workforce development is what the Pentagon wants and needs. Furthermore, and more importantly, the Georgia Defense Initiative protects the third of a million jobs in Georgia and $25 billion economic impact that workforce brings. Mr. Speaker, someday in the future, you see a great picture of First Lieutenant Earl Earhart. Can I get a round of applause for First Lieutenant Earhart? I tell you, an AV-8 Harrier is an amazing plane, and I could not fly that airplane, but Chairman Earhart's son can and does. Someday in the future, perhaps 5 years, perhaps 20 years, it won't be Lieutenant Earhart, it'll be Major Earhart or Colonel Earhart, or perhaps General Earhart will be taken off that uniform he's wearing, the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, and never put it on again. He'll be entering the workforce, the civilian workforce. Mr. Speaker, the workforce he joins, I hope, is going to be right here in Georgia, supporting future lieutenants serving on Georgia's military installations. I yield for questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true that I stood as inconspicuously as possible, because this is very possibly one of the most important military bills that we would have passed?
I agree with you. I think the most important military bill is the one you started, sir. But the culmination of all the workforce, the work we've done on the military affairs, I agree with you, sir.
Is it not, will you, gentleman, further yield?
Of course.
Is it not also true that by doing this, we not only bring one of the great states for defense in this union, Georgia, into line with some of our greatest competitors for future expansions, and we protect a $25 billion industry that involves thousands of civilian employees, but most importantly, thousands of very brave, active duty members of our military.
That's exactly right, sir. Thank you for the question. Mr. Speaker,
No further questions.
I yield the well, sir.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a floor substitute being offered. It is LC 430970 ERS, offered by Earhart, Belton, and others. The clerk will read the caption to the floor sub.
LC 430970 ERS, offered by Chairman Earhart, 36th, and others, offers the following substitute to SB 395. It has been printed, distributed, and has been on your desk since 9:50 this morning.
The floor sub is also on the projector screen. Is there any objection to adopting the floor substitute? Is there objection? Chair hears none, and the floor substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 395 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of Senate Bill 395, the ayes are 160, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 381.
Senate Bill 381 by Senator Thompson, the 14th, Schaefer, the 48th, Williams, the 27th, Harbin, the 16th, Martin, of the 9th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 5 of Title 33 of the official code of Georgia, annotated relating to surplus line insurance, so as to provide that a non-admitted insurer domiciled in this state will be deemed a domestic surplus lines insurer if certain criteria are met. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Insurance. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of this body, I'm humbled to stand here before you after the passage of those two previous measures. Just outstanding work, and I commend the chairman of both those committees from which those bills came. But today I'm bringing this. Those bills were tremendously important for families in Georgia, for the businesses of Georgia, especially our military families. This bill is also important to Georgians. I'm just not going to say, I'm not going to offend you by saying it's quite as significant, but this Senate Bill 381 deals with the Georgia domestic surplus lines insurance marketplace. For those of you might have forgotten or never knew in the first place, surplus lines policies are specialty products that provide coverage for risks that are declined by standard underwriting markets of admitted insurance carriers. It's a very important marketplace for Georgia-based businesses as it helps to fill in what would otherwise be gaps for their risk management needs. Examples of such products are any risks that do not fit standard market underwriting guidelines, such as high-risk exposures, explosive and fertilizer manufacturing, hazardous material haulers. It provides access to insurance for otherwise hard-to-place business risks such as bars and taverns, dance floors, properties that are vacant, taxi cabs, delivery services, long-haul trucking, things of that nature. It often includes the very high-limit umbrella and reinsurance markets. Many of you might be familiar with specialty lines products for event coverages like tournament prizes such as hole-in-one insurance, things of that nature, other unique market situations. Oftentimes these are business risks with excessive or otherwise unacceptable loss histories. So what we're doing here today is under current law, surplus lines insurance can only be written by non-admitted carriers, and this bill fixes that problem. This bill would allow Georgia domiciled insurance companies that write these surplus lines insurance products in other states to also sell their insurance products in Georgia. In other words, this bill would allow surplus lines companies that have chosen to make Georgia home to be on an equal footing with surplus lines companies from other states. If you think about it, it should encourage out-of-state companies that are already selling to Georgia to consider moving to the #1 state in which to do business. If you further think about it, there's absolutely no reason that companies should consider domiciling in places like Gainesville, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Columbia, South Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, or any similar heaven-forsaken places like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with apologies to the best seatmate in the house who's not paying attention to my presentation. Otherwise, happy to stand for questions, and otherwise, if not, I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. Speaker.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Be happy to yield, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Pizzo to your right for a question.
To my friend, do you yield?
I'll be happy to.
I'm just going to have to take your word for it that this is actually a good bill. It actually put me to sleep 3 times trying to read it, and your presentation has been no more helpful to me. So I appreciate you bringing this bill.
At least you paid attention.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask for your favorable consideration of this body, and I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 381 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 381, the ayes are 158, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 357.
Senate Bill 357 by Senator Burke, the 11th, Utterman of the 45th, Red of the 33rd, Hill of the 4th, Huffstetler of the 52nd, and others. To be titled an act to amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to health so as to create the Health Coordination and Innovation Council of the State of Georgia. This bill I referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jaspers to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. Bring before you Senate Bill 357. Dr. Dean Burke over in the Senate started working in a hospital when he was 13 years old. He's done everything, carrying out the trash, painting the walls, healing the sick, and being an administrator and running his home hospital. And he's seen a lot change over his time there. And the individual with that longevity has seen lots of reports that say this is important and that's important. The ones that say that we're obese. But what he hasn't seen is a change in outcomes in many areas. That's the broad improvement of health care. We spend more money than any country in the world on health care, but the outcomes don't reflect that. Just look at the news. We're 41st in general outcomes in the United States. Last year, Senator Burke and other senators looked at these outcomes and then looked across the United States to see what could be done to address improvements in health for our citizens. In Iowa, he saw an example where they had created a council, a group that would focus the attention of all stakeholders on healthcare outcomes that could possibly turn that ship around. Look what we did in criminal justice reform. We focused on a problem and we worked together to repair it. That's what you have in Senate Bill 357. He and his Senate colleagues attempt to do this. It's the Healthcare Coordination and Innovation Council of the state of Georgia. It's their result, similar to what we did with the Rural Development Council, but it's a very different bill. Their goal was to identify the greatest healthcare problems in the state. When you look through the bill, you'll see the council will draw on the technical knowledge of the professionals who are already paid. It will break down silos. And I think that's what I saw when I read through this bill. So these people will work together. Along with these folks and the director, they'll work to coordinate the major functions of the state's healthcare system. Those are described in lines 111 through 128. There is a director who will be appointed by the governor to oversee this council. This person must have extensive experience in healthcare policy that will include being a healthcare clinician and an administrator. They'll have real-world healthcare experience. And I know the governor will choose this person carefully because this will impact healthcare throughout our state. There's an advisory board that will work with them. I think of those folks as the worker bees who out there will give this council ideas on what to do. And lastly, on line 176, that's the fatter part of the bill. If you've been on a committee for a while, you've seen these bills that come back and say that there's going to be a report that's going to go to the committee chairman. And you always wonder, do they ever get them? Do they ever read them? Whatever happens to them? Well, they'll all now go to this council to consolidate all that information. I know we have felt this year that we need to focus on issues and we to really create results. Here in the House, we passed two councils. One that was in my bill earlier this year, the Rural Center for Healthcare and Sustainability, and one in Chairman Shaw's bill, the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation, that he presented recently. There will be money spent. I've had a number of questions on this, but no doubt we're betting on our return on investment to pay off for Georgians. 4 years from now, if this isn't working, it'll disappear. But if it is, Georgians will be benefiting. It will address outcomes. I know they work very hard at it. The council will focus on those issues, and I look forward to seeing this work positively. Mr. Speaker, that's my bill, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'll be glad to.
Chair recognizes Representative Buckner to your left for a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am, sure do.
Just as for full disclosure, I worked in public health for a great deal of my career, and one of the areas that I don't see included in this that I think would be really pertinent is epidemiology. They are already looking at trends and whether or not treatments are working. So is there any mechanism that epidemiologists can be included on this council, because it would be really critical to have someone from that field, I think.
Well, it's not true. They would probably be working for the Department of Community Health. And
They
they're
are
direct.
not. They're working for the Department of Public
Well,
Health
they're,
right
if
now.
you look on line 42, they do list the Department of Public Health and their commissioner as part of the advisory group.
So you're assuming that whatever information needed from that department would come through the commissioner to this council?
I do, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir. One more, please.
Chair recognizes Representative Cook to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Representative, could you tell us exactly or approximately how much the cost would be?
I don't know. You know, I looked at the two that we did, and their total cost is right around 1.6 million, I think, for both of them. The Senate hasn't released their budget, so we can see that. I'm sure they'll do it on their side, just as we did the two that we had on our side.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
You have no further questions.
I'd be glad to yield the well, because I know I'm the only thing between us and home. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Hawkins to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll keep this short. Representative Jaspers did a wonderful job. Over the years, Senator Burke and I have been to a lot of healthcare meetings and study committees, and I have a great deal of respect for him. And when I read this bill, I could see his fingerprints in this bill, because like what we do in healthcare as far as treatment, this council and agency will first gather data, and then it will establish a treatment plan, understanding that data, and then prescribe a solution. And in healthcare, we're very aware that over-medication can be as bad as no medication. So over-regulation in government sometimes becomes a problem, but with this established pathway, I think we'll be in very good hands. And unlike Washington, who really Forrest Gumped their way through healthcare and replaced a system, thank you, replaced a system that worked with something that sounded good, this is the right plan, the right bill, and the right time for Georgians to enjoy really good health care. I rise in support of this bill, and I ask you to also vote in support of this bill. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? Committee chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 357 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 357, the ayes are 153, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 82.
Senate Bill 82 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd, Harbison of the 15th, and Davenport of the 44th. To be entitled an act to amend Part 7 of Article 7 of Chapter 3, Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to Hope Scholarships and Grants, so as to create a need-based Hope Scholarship and Grant. This bill having referred to the Committee on Higher Education, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Blackman to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members. Senate Bill 82 is actually House Bill 222 from last session, has passed this body unanimously on 2 different occasions. It allows those reserve and guard members serving us here in Georgia access to the Hope Scholarship and the Hope Grant. Just like to acknowledge the hard work of the Military Affairs Working Group and Senator Jackson and others for helping with this measure. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to yield for questions if there are any.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Belton to your right for a question.
Thanks, sir. Do you yield for questions, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is this something we've been working on a long time? It was passed twice unanimously by this House?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. If I yield for one further question, Mr. Speaker, if there is one.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this legislation. Once again, it means so much to the military community, and thank you for what you do.
It's been a pleasure working with you on it. Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, with that, I will ask
You
for
have
favor.
no further questions.
Sir?
You have no further questions.
Yes, sir. I'll ask for favorable consideration and yield the will, sir. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 82 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 82. The ayes are 158, the nays are 0. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 321.
Senate Bill 321 by Senator Tillery of the 19th Stone of the 23rd, Mullins to the 53rd, Parent of the 42nd, Cowser to the 46th. To be entitled an Act to amend Code Section 494168.1, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to civil penalties for false or fraudulent Medicaid claims, so as to increase the civil penalties that should be imposed in order to allow the state to recover the maximum penalty authorized by law. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Beskin to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. Today I bring you Senate Bill 321, which is a bill brought at the request of the Attorney General. This bill revises Georgia's False Medicaid Claims Act to align it with federal law and federal regulations, which is necessary so that Georgia can continue to collect an enhanced penalty, an additional 10% for Medicaid fraud and abuse recoveries made under our state act. Federal law provides that a state receives a share of recovery made in a Medicaid fraud case that is proportional or equal to the percent of the state's share of Medicaid costs. Federal law further provides that a state receives an enhanced penalty of an additional 10% if its statute is aligned with the federal statute. In Georgia, our state contributes about 1/3 of all Medicaid claim costs, and the federal government contributes about 2/3. This 10% enhancement would thus mean that about $33,000 additional dollars for any $1 million claim recovered as Medicare fraud and abuse. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will be happy to answer any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Mabel Thomas to your left for a question.
Does the gentlewoman yield?
I do.
Is it not true? I'm interested in knowing whether or not there was a problem with fraud that brought about this reform.
There were a couple of problems or situations that have resulted in needing this bill. Currently, our state statute is compliant and we are in a grace period. So since 2007, we've been collecting an enhanced 10% penalty, but that will sunset at the end of this year. So if we don't pass this statute, we will lose this 10% enhancement. And in the calendar years 15, 16, 17, Georgia collected about $14 million in Medicaid fraud and abuse recovery.
Will this be, does the gentlewoman yield?
Further yield? I do.
So by passing this bill, is it not true that this could be an indication that Georgia is willing to expand Medicaid since they're ready to bring their information into online in alignment?
Representative, I thought about that question, and actually this bill is not a Medicaid expansion or non-expansion bill, but I do think it has an implication to the extent currently Georgia pays about a third of any claim. For every $1 million, Georgia would get an additional $33,000. But under the proposed Medicaid expansion provided under the Affordable Care Act, Georgia's initial contribution would only be 10%. So 10% is under $1 million recovery. Georgia would only get an additional $1,000. It would take, I said that wrong. It would increase the recovery to 11% rather than 10%, instead of 33% going to 36.3%, and I totally messed up that math. But my point is that Georgia would be far less incentivized, would receive far less in recompense for pursuing Medicaid fraud under a situation where we were paying far less of the claim amount. And I appreciate the representative's question.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I will.
Chair recognizes Representative Mark Morris to your left for a question.
Does the gentlelady yield?
I do.
Would you say that this bill supports the Attorney General's efforts in aggressively fighting Medicaid fraud?
I would say that it does. I think the gentleman knows of what he speaks, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well
You
and
have
ask
no
for
further
favorable
questions.
consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 321 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 321. The ayes are 152. The nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Knight rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move Senate Bill 191 from the Energy, Utilities, and Communication Committee to the Game, Fish, and Parks Committee Both chairmen are in agreement.
So let me see if I understand the motion. The chair put a bill in energy, utilities, and telecom that he should have put in game, fish, and parks?
No, sir. It is a dead bill, if you will, that is a vehicle for a title.
Ah, I've heard of vehicles.
Yeah, yes, sir. One measure that this body has passed over to the Senate a couple of years ago that they have failed to act upon.
All right. Chairman Knight has moved that Senate Bill 191 be withdrawn from the Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee and recommitted to the Game, Fish, and Parks Committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 191 by Senator Jeffries, the 17th, Hill of the 4th, Stone of the 23rd, Watson of the 1st, Ligon of the 3rd, and others, be entitled an act to amend titles 12, 22, and 50. The official code of Georgia annotated relating to conservation and natural resources, eminent domain, and state government, respectively, so as to provide for the regulation and the permitting of petroleum pipelines in this state.
On the gentleman's motion, chair hears no objections. It is so ordered. What purpose does Representative Laricchia rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
Make a motion that the rules be temporarily suspended so that a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Laricchia, 169th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend an act providing a new charter for the city of Douglas.
Chair hears no objection to the gentleman's motion. It is so ordered, and it is assigned to the Intergovernmental Coordination Committee. If you have signed up for an announcement, Chair announces that Senate Bill 328 will be postponed to the next legislative day. If you have signed up for an announcement, make your way to the front of the chamber. But the House will continue to be in order so you can hear these announcements. A lot of committee activity today. Chair recognizes Chairman Ballinger for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Juvenile Justice Committee that was scheduled to meet today at 1, that meeting has been rescheduled. We will meet on Monday in room 415 of the CLOB at 3. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Chairman Harden for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Special Rules Committee will meet in CLOB 515 immediately upon adjournment. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Transportation Committee will meet directly upon adjournment in CLOB 506.
Chair recognizes Chairman Willard for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will meet at 2:45 in the Judiciary Room at room 132 at 2:45. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jay Powell for an announcement.
Ways and Means Subcommittee on Public Policy and Finance will meet in 341 in the Capitol immediately upon adjournment.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for an announcement.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Health and Human Services will meet today in room 406. Room 406. Let's meet at 2:45. That gives you about 20 minutes. It will not be as long as it was yesterday, but will be meeting in 406. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Game, Fish, and Parks Committee will meet at 3 o'clock in room 403. Again, 3 o'clock, 403. We have two quick measures to take up, one that we addressed yesterday, and then quick measure, the shoal bass bill, so it should not take but about 10 or 15 minutes. 3 o'clock, 403.
Chair recognizes Representative Abel Mabel Thomas for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the body. I just want to bring to your attention for any of the historic preservation buffs in the room, I put on your desk, there's a program in Atlanta called Phoenix Flies, and it has over 100 historic sites in Atlanta, and one of those sites is a site that I'm affiliated with, English Avenue School. So if you're available on Sunday, please feel free to come into the area and talk a little bit about historic preservation. Also, I want to thank those who came to the abolitionist exhibit and to announce that we will be downstairs on the second floor in the south wing with the women in white, and that exhibit will be up today as well. Thank you very much.
That completes our announcements. That completes the announcements. The chair recognizes the majority leader of the House for a motion. Listen up.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand in recess until 4 p.m. today and then stand adjourned until 11 a.m. Monday, March 19th, 2018.
I'm going to restate the motion. The motion by the majority leader is that this House be in recess until 4 p.m. today, whereupon we would be adjourned until Monday, March 19 at 11 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House will be in recess until 4 p.m. today, whereupon we will stand adjourned until Monday, March 19 at 11 a.m.